5. Curacao. You can understand why most people have never thought about vacationing to Curacao because, well, they probably have never heard of Curacao. Curacao is a tiny island nation in the Caribbean Sea that was once an important cog in the machine of the Dutch slave empire. In recent times, however, it is an island paradise, and one that is definitely worth the amount that you would pay for a stay there. Like most Caribbean islands, flights from the US and Canada are fairly cheap. A standard ticket should cost somewhere in the $360 range, although this could be slightly more or less depending on where you live. Once you arrive on the island, you can find beautiful resorts where you can stay for less than $70 a night. 4. Thailand. For decades, Thailand has been notorious for being an incredibly fun and incredibly cheap vacation destination. When hostilities between China and the United States were at their peak, Thailand was pitched as a cheap alternative to Japan for people that wanted to experience Eastern culture. I know several people who spent a lot of time in Thailand, and all of them gush about how great it was to stay in this Southeast Asian country. Thailand is an incredibly poor nation, but the richness of the local culture and the friendliness of the local community more than make up for some of the comforts that you will give up to visit there. More importantly, for our purposes, staying in Thailand is incredibly cheap. Nice hotels cost along the same lines as some of our other entries. But if you are planning to stay long-term, you can rent a room in a house or a small apartment for less than $100 a month. 3. US. Canada. For the citizens of most countries, traveling to the US or Canada probably would not be their cheapest vacation option. If you already live in one of those countries, however, traveling to the other should be an easy and affordable trip. For instance, I grew up near Buffalo, New York, and it was less than a 3-hour drive to go to Toronto, a major city in Canada. Even my high school routinely took trips to Canada to see Niagara Falls and other tourist destinations. If you live on the west coast of the US, Vancouver is a Canadian city nearby that is definitely worth visiting. If you live in Vancouver or another part of British Columbia, California, Washington, and even Alaska are states nearby that would make for fun, cheap vacations. If you live on the East Coast, New York, Boston, Toronto, Halifax, and Washington, D.C. should only be a short plane ride, or in some cases, even drive away. The close proximity of these countries, combined with the close relationship between their governments, makes travel between them incredibly affordable. 2. Dominican Republic. I was worried that too many of the entries on this list were about small island nations in the Caribbean. But travel to the Dominican Republic is so easy and affordable that I could not help but reserve a spot for it in this article. Much like its Caribbean neighbors, the Dominican Republic is such an affordable vacation destination because 1. It is in close proximity to the US and Canada, where most of our readers are from, and 2. The country's poverty level ensures that prices for housing and food will not be very high. If you are leaving from the northeast coast of the United States, you can expect a two-way ticket to the Dominican to cost somewhere between $370 and $400. Tickets become cheaper the further south that you live. Once you arrive on the island, your hotel should not cost you any more than $70 per night. 1. Japan. Of all the entries on this list, Japan is probably the country that is already most popular with tourists. You'd think that the popularity would raise prices in the land of the rising sun. But the Japanese government has wisely reinvested their revenue into their infrastructure and other tourist industries. If you're coming from the east coast of the United States or Canada, it would be hard for you to take a week-long trip for less than $1,000. If you come from the west coast, however, it should be much cheaper. This is because plane tickets from the west coast to Japan should only cost about $575 per round-trip ticket. Just make sure that you have a lot of spending money left over because there are several paid attractions in Japan that are worth visiting.